all South African farmhouse. An English mother who recently became widowed gives birth to a young boy named Peter Philip Kenneth, or PK. He lives a simple life and is well cared for by his mother and his nanny. The kid of the nanny, Tannerai, is his best friend, and they do everything together. PK's mother teaches the two of them at the farmhouse. As best as she can, life seems to be going peacefully for PK, until all the farm cattle die due to a mysterious illness. His mother suffers a nervous breakdown due to this and is advised to rest completely. As a result, little PK is sent away to a boarding school while she recovers. Unfortunately, the only boarding school they can afford is the one run by Afrikaners. These are Europeans who settled in South Africa in the 1680s and are also known as white Africans. On the first day of school, PK attends a history lecture where the professor explains that the English fought the Afrikaners for control of the land and sent them to concentration camps. After centuries, a conservative Afrikaner government was finally voted into power, leading to racial discrimination against both the English and the blacks. PK realizes he is the only English boy at the school, and the other students glare at him, silently blaming him for the deaths of their ancestors. An older student named Yapi Boatha goes so far as to spit in Pike's face. He and his friends corner Pike in the bathroom one night, taunting him and calling him a piss cop or piss head. They forcibly drag him into the shower and urinate on him. The other students do not intervene. Instead, they take pleasure in his humiliation. The extreme bullying causes Piquet to develop the habit of bedwetting. From anxiety one night, a guard informs PK that his mother has passed away. He is taken back to the farmhouse for the funeral, where he reunites with his nanny and Hondurai. Having left just after his mother became ill, PK feels extreme guilt over her death. He often wonders if she would still be alive, if he had stayed to help care for her. Later, PK shares with his nanny the bullying he endures at school. She's always cared for PK as if he were her own, and she is the only family he has left. Following this, Piquet's nanny calls upon the greatest healer from her tribe, Dabula Manzi, in order to help him overcome his fears. Dabula Manzi performs a ritual that puts Piquet in a trance. With his healing power, he helps the little kid release his deep-rooted fears and coping habits. PK is given a chicken, which he names Mother Courage, to guide him through his journey. She becomes his best friend during his childhood, with his only living relative being his grandfather in Congo. Pique is sent back to boarding school. He takes Mother Courage with him, and she keeps an eye out for bullies at night. A month later, news breaks out that war has started in Europe. That night, PK and Mother Courage are kidnapped from their dorm and brought to a hall. Their Bota stands in front and conducts a mock Nazi court trial against them. He reveals his obsession with Hitler and expresses his hatred for the English, holding Piquet responsible for the deaths of thousands of Afrikaners during the war. Poor little Piquet stands in fear, as Botha vows to punish him and all the Englishmen accordingly. Shortly after, Botha orders the other students to hang Mother Courage. PK pleads with them not to hurt her, but they ignore him. They hang her from the ceiling, and Botha kills her with a rock from a slingshot. Enraged, PK lunges at Botha, knocking him backward onto a small flagpole that pierces his buttocks. The other students laugh as Botha winces in pain. Feeling humiliated, Botha orders PK to be hung upside down from the ceiling, just like Mother Courage. The students begin chanting in unison to kill PK, which riles up Botha even more. He hits PK with a rock from his slingshot and knocks him unconscious. Just then, a professor enters the hall and sees the chaos. Botha approaches him, but the professor slaps him and calls him stupid in front of everyone. Due to this incident, Botha is expelled from the school for good. After the deaths of his mother and his pet chicken, PK feels like things can't get any worse. Then he learns that his beloved nanny and Tanderai must return to their family. It seems like all his loved ones are being taken away from him, leaving Pike feeling alone once again. Eventually, his grandfather returns from the Congo and takes him to live with him in Barberton. Unfortunately, he fails to develop a bond with PK, so his grandfather introduces him to one of his friends. This is when we meet Karl Doak von Wallenstein, better known as Doak. Doc is a lonely German musician and amateur botanist who lost his entire family when they were executed by the Nazis. Piquet's grandfather suggests that Doc take the young boy under his wing and give him piano lessons. In return, Piquet will help him with his thriving cactus garden. DOC readily agrees to mentor the little boy, as he had lost his grandson not too long ago. Piquet becomes an excellent piano player under his guidance. When World War II begins, DOC is imprisoned in Barberton prison for failing to register as an enemy alien. The head of the prison staff, Kommandant von Ziele, turns out to be an Afrikaner who admires German culture. As a result, he allows DOC to keep a cactus garden in the prison and a piano in his cell besides this. He also grants unrestricted visitation rights to PK. A few days later, DOC discovers that PK is only getting satisfactory marks at school. He learns that smart kids get bullied at his school. He believes this is why PK isn't putting much effort into his studies. DOC then introduces him to a colored prisoner named Geel Piet, who is experienced in boxing. Piet becomes Peek's boxing mentor, teaching him the mantra first with the head, then with the heart. This mantra stays with him throughout his life. Meanwhile, Pike keeps up with his piano lessons and becomes a master at playing flawlessly. One day, Pike notices that DOC brings cacti with roots wrapped in tobacco leaves. Although this is illegal, Pike privately asks him if he can keep the tobacco. Unfortunately, a sergeant overhears this and brutally beats him with a baton. Pike then cleverly suggests that Pete clear the bucket every day, allowing him to sneak in the tobacco undetected. The scene then cuts to 5 years later. Pete continues to diligently train with Pete in prison. He eventually wins the inter-prison boxing championship at the age of 12. Meanwhile, Doc's cactus garden flourishes as he plants and fertilizes the cacti that PK brings from his home in Barberton. They also continue supplying tobacco to Piat and other prisoners. In secret, Piquet, always kind and compassionate, becomes the unofficial letter writer for the prisoners. Many prisoners begin calling Piquet the Rainmaker. This is because he brings peace and treats everyone with compassion, regardless of their tribe. Piquet gradually becomes aware of the horrors faced by black prisoners. The Afrikaner guards detain them under dreadful conditions and frequently beat them. One day, DOC gives Piet a bucket of tobacco for himself and the other prisoners. However, Sergeant Bormann notices Piet from afar and calls him over. The guard then humiliates him by dropping manure on his shoes and forcing Pete to eat it. Despite having the opportunity to blame other prisoners, Pete kneels down and eats the manure, while the other prisoners watch in pity. Pete is deeply hurt to see Pete, whom he loves and respects, so degraded after the guard leaves. DOC and Pete rush to help Pete, and the other prisoners sing to honor his courage. Following this, news emerges that the war will soon end. DOC happily shares this news with Pete and PK, mentioning that he'll finally be able to return to Germany. However, PK feels sad that he may never see DOC again. Shortly after, the commander asks DOC to organize a concert to celebrate the annual visit by the prison commissioner. Though initially hesitant, DOC agrees to Pete's request. The three of them plan the concert, with DOC flawlessly playing the piano. Pika is tasked with writing the lyrics and brings together 3 tribes of prisoners to sing in their respective languages. The catch is that the lyrics convey the sentiments of the colored prisoners. The song subtly insults and attacks the Afrikaner guards in languages they don't understand. On the night of the concert, PK, DOC, and the prisoners prepare for their performance. PK notices Piet's absence, but DOC assures him that Piet will arrive soon. Meanwhile, Piet hurries to join the crowd since he's already late for the show. Just as he leaves his cell, he encounters Sergeant Bormann. He stops Piet and demands he translate the lyrics of the song they're singing. The sergeant also blames him for starting the concert and begins assaulting him. Fed up with the abuse, Pete bravely translates the lyrics, which call the guards cowards. Enraged, the sergeant brutally beats him. while the oblivious prisoners continue singing and enjoying the show. Moments later, PK sees Sergeant Borman at the fence behind the stage, with his clothes spattered with blood. Realizing something is wrong, PK rushes off to investigate. He then discovers Pete in the yard, close to death from the officer's beatings. With his last breath, Pete repeats the mantra, first with the head, then with the heart, and dies in PK's arms as the war finally comes to an end. DOC returns to Germany. Piquet remembers the loved ones he has lost and feels their absence as he's left alone once again. The scene then shifts 6 years ahead, and Piquet, now 18, attends a prestigious school where he excels academically. He's earned the respect of the school headmaster and a scholarship for his studies. His closest companion is Maury, his manager who arranges boxing matches for him. PK is slated to compete in a boxing championship where he notices an Afrikaner girl in the audience cheering for him. Intrigued, he asks Maury to find out her identity. PK wins the championship, impressing the entire crowd. Maury later reveals that the girl is Maria Maris, the daughter of a prominent official in the National Party who resides in a boarding school. Despite Maury's warnings, PK sneaks out one night to meet Maria. She informs him that her father would never approve dating an English boy undeterred. PK resolves to ask her father for permission himself. On another occasion, Maury takes Piquet to meet a boxing trainer named Mr. Greenwald to enhance his skills, although initially dismissive. Mr. Greenwald changes his mind when he sees Piquet fight in the ring. He remains impressed by his strength and skill. Piquet's performance, including an 8-punch combination, garners praise from both the trainer and his opponent. Mr. Greenwald agrees to discuss terms for training Piquet further. Subsequently, Piquet meets Maria's father, Professor Daniel Maris, to seek permission to court his daughter. However, their discussion on tribal rights escalates into a clash of viewpoints, as Mr. Maris rejects Piquet's liberal ideas and denies him permission to see his daughter. Following Mr. Greenwald's proposal of a fight against black boxer Gideon Duma Piquet and Maury refuse due to the illegality of race mixing in a match. As they exit, PK spots Maria waiting for him. Knowing her father's disapproval, they decide to date secretly. Later, the man who proposed the fight reveals himself as a former inmate of Barberton Prison. Alongside Piat, PK recognizes him, and Duma introduces himself. Meanwhile, Mr. Maris asks Colonel Brayton and his sergeant to spy on PK. Subsequently, PK heads to Alexandria for the boxing match against Duma, accompanied by Maury, Maria, and Mr. Greenwald. Though Piquet wins the fight, he and Duma become friends. Piquet later visits Duma in Alexandria, where they discuss the town's poor living conditions and Duma's hopes for equality among tribes in South Africa. Duma proposes starting an English school for black people, which PK and Maury agree to. After initial hesitation, they gain permission from the school headmaster to use a study room on Saturday nights for classes on a Saturday night. Maria argues with her father after he disapproves of her relationship with PK due to his involvement in an integrated gym in association with an anti-racist boxing coach when her father threatens punishment. Maria angrily runs away from home. Meanwhile, the people of Alexandria arrive for their English classes at the school, where Maria unexpectedly shows her support for PK. Unfortunately, they are informed the very next day that the police authorities have ordered them to close the Saturday night class. Following this, it's revealed that Yapi Bota has become a sergeant and is the one who's been spying on Maria and PK. He enters PK's gym with his men and begins to blame him for getting expelled from school. Violence erupts as the policemen start beating PK and anyone who tries to intervene, including Duma and Mr. Greenwald. On the other hand, PK and Maria's relationship blossoms despite her father's disapproval. One night, Maury arranges for them to teach English classes in his uncle's church. Maria surprises them with pencils for the students. Moments later, the police raid the church, accusing them of violating its sanctity and mixing races. In the chaos, the police begin beating everyone, and tragically, Maria is struck with a baton and dies on the spot. Her sudden death impacts PK like nothing has before. and he considers leaving Africa to study at Oxford. However, Duma encourages him by showing him how much learning English is helping the people. In Alexandria one night, Vrayton and his police, including Yapi Bota, arrive in Alexandra Township. Their aim is to raid a party in search of PK. The police enter with force and begin shooting and beating people indiscriminately. Just when Bota is about to shoot, the boxing promoter Piquet steps out of hiding. He then bravely demands that Bota stop the raid. The two of them fight, and Piquet eventually knocks Bota out. He soon wakes up and tries to shoot Piquet, but Duma swiftly hits him in the head and knocks him out. Ultimately, Piquet and Duma vow to keep fighting against racial injustice and continue their journey. The next morning, the movie comes to an end, as Piquet reflects on the advice he's received from all the important figures in his life.